French President Francois Hollande and Prime Minister Manuel Valls have arrived in Nice following a deadly attack in the resort city that killed at least 84 people. The President and other French officials visited the Pasteur Hospital where some of the injured are being treated.
We also wanted to express our sympathy for the victims and to the families. As I'm speaking, 84 people are dead and some 50 people are in critical condition, between life and death. Among these victims are French people, foreigners, and many children. Young children who came to see the fireworks with their families, to be happy, to share in something joyous, something dazzling, but were also struck dead to satisfy the cruelty of an individual.
The attacker drove a large truck through a crowd of people out celebrating Bastille Day in Nice on Thursday evening. Local reports say the attacker hired the vehicle from a rental company, in Saint-Laurent-du-Var, a town to the west of Nice, 2 days beforehand. He drove it at full speed along the promenade where families strolled after watching a fireworks display. The vehicle zigzagged for up to 2 kilometers through the crowd. Police finally managed to stop the driver near the luxury Palais de la Méditerranée hotel where he was shot dead. Police later found identity papers inside the truck revealing the driver as a 31-year-old French-Tunisian man who looked named as Mohamed Bouhlel. Meanwhile, witnesses on Thursday's attack in Nice described their ordeal. Some questioned how the truck could have got into the area given the heavy security presence.
The crowd screamed. We saw people running everywhere and we turned around. 3 meters away, the truck was crushing so many people. We heard gunfire too. So with the panic and crush of the crowd, we ran into a building. We heard rumors that they were terrorists with guns, so we went into the basement. It was all dark, and there were foreigners there. We didn't make any noise. We hid. We were very frightened. The image that stays with me is really in slow motion. The truck passing and not stopping, like a train, plowing through a ton of people.
My feeling at the end of it was just one of total shock and horror.
We saw lots of armed police and soldiers.
The big question is, how did the truck get on the promenade in the first place?
Now CCTV's Dan Williams joins me with the latest from Paris. So Dan, what is the security situation like now in France?
Well, as you can imagine, as France heads into the weekend, there is still a sense of unease as France reels once again from yet another terrorist attack. The state of emergency that was imposed following the attacks last year in November in Paris, that has now been extended for a further 3 months. That was due to end on July the 26th. It has now, as I say, been extended yet further. But this, of course, is just the latest terrorist attack to impact on France. Of course, the events last year at Charlie Hebdo in January last year, that was then followed by 130 people dying in the atrocities in Paris, where both the Bataclan music venue as well as the Stade de France stadium were both targeted there. And now this event as well. Now, Manuel Valls, the Prime Minister of France, has said that we are now entering a new era in France, an era of terrorism. That once again underlines just the chance of further repetition as well going forward. That, of course, then all adds to a very uneasy situation here in Paris, in France as a whole. And of course, there are now going to be questions as to what now can be done to stop this. If anything, of course, there has already been criticism of the French intelligence chiefs, and that will continue. Of course, we've had Euro 2016, that passed off without incident, but the questions as to how a truck was able to get access to such a large group of people without it being properly secured off under a state of emergency, those kind of questions will now continue to be asked.
Of course, very pertinent questions, Dan, and leaders from all over the world have been reacting, condemning the senseless attack. Have the French officials released more information on the attacker and what is expected in the next few days?
Well, the Francois Molins, the lead prosecutor, in the last couple of hours has named the attacker as Mohamed Bouhlel, from Tunisia descent. He's age 31. We understand he was married, he had children. We understand that he was a chauffeur as well, and that in the lorry they found both bank details as well as a driving license and also an automatic gun. Of course, the questions remained as to whether he acted alone or did he have help, and if so, what kind of help, and how can the authorities detect that and find those others perhaps that might be responsible, or perhaps maybe he did act alone. We understand that the truck was rented on the 11th of July and that really is most of the details as we know so far. But the questions, of course, will continue for authorities here. They'll be desperately trying to picture this all together over the coming days as France enters a period of 3 days of mourning, of course, and we had, of course, the leaders, both Francois Hollande as well as Manuel Valls, visiting the hospital down in Nice as well to get a clearer picture of events down there. So quite a lot of work will now be done behind the scenes in order to get a clearer picture of who this person was, whether they acted alone, and of course how to make sure that these kind of events stop happening in France.
All right, John Williams, live for us there in Paris. Many thanks, John. Well, let's broaden this conversation. And joining me here in studio is Ambassador Boaz Mbaya, an international relations analyst. Ambassador, of course, we've had French officials saying they're now entering an era of terrorism, and the French president saying it's going to be a very long battle against terrorism. What exactly does that mean?
It means just that. The first thing we need to understand about terrorism is that it's a very invisible enemy. You don't see when it is going to strike. And I think second point would be France has a very strong foreign policy on terrorism, especially its military action in West Africa has incensed the terrorist groups to try and strike France. In addition, the laws that France has taken on dress code for ladies must probably have incensed the residents within France itself. And this, from what we understand, is a homegrown terrorist act, so it could be related to those particular laws in terms of reaction by the terrorist groups.
The African continent is obviously on very high alert. I mean, it's no stranger to this kind of terror attack. So what can the countries in the continent learn from this particular attack?
First point would be vigilant. Be vigilant. And second point, invest in intelligence. And I think African countries sometimes tend to lax a lot of their actions in terms of how to gather information and what to do with that information. Information processing is very poor. And three, we need to share intelligence gathering with the developed countries who seem to have invested quite a bit in trying to understand the terrorist actions. So it's a combination of many factors, but the basic point is that we have to be vigilant. What happened, say, in Kapenguria yesterday, we should point to how vigilant we must be as a country. What happened in the United States explains the whole point of unpredictability of terrorist acts. So a terrorist doesn't necessarily have to come from outside. It could be within from our own societies.
And you know, drawing from, you mentioned Kapenguria, which happened here in Kenya, in Western Kenya, and of course, that was a police officer.
Yeah.
And the police, of course, managed to track what he's been doing on his social media. And also taking you back to what happened in France, we've had people saying they didn't think it was an act of terror there in France. Does this mean then the face of terrorism is changing? It's no longer the people with explosives strapped on themselves?
I would like to ask those people one question. What is the difference between a mass murderer and a terrorist? They are the same. So if the end result is to kill as many people as they want to, they are terrorists. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we'll make a distinction between a terrorist and that kind of murderer. So we just have to be vigilant. What is the mental setup of people like those ones? And this is what intelligence is going to tell us. So we have to invest very heavily in intelligence to try and trace who is likely to cause problems, because apparently he was known to the police for petty crimes. They should have gone further to find out what his real intentions were. So it means intelligence gathering. Probably the synchronization of the security forces was not done properly.
Right.
Yes.
Well, let's leave it there for now, Ambassador. Thanks very much for those insights.